Welcome, nutritionradio.org listeners. This is Lonnie Lowry, University Nutrition Professor of over 20 years and podcast host of long-running shows like Iron Radio. Come on in. Fitness Fridays. Hey, everybody. Today we have a bit of a rant and even a question for all of you about pre-workout practices or ingredients maybe in a pre-workout product. What do you do to get your head in the game, if anything? And just a little story. Back in the day, there really was no such category. Pre-workout, it wasn't a thing. We would use caffeine pills like No-Dose, or even try mini-thins, which was ephedrine that you could easily buy in corner gas stations, which had its pros and cons. But all the while, we were students. We were reading peer-reviewed literature on such things, and we understood a lot of the risks. And there were some. Arrhythmias, sleeplessness. There was weight loss with that sort of thing. Ephedrine hydrochloride. Anyway, some of my workout group and I, we would be berated, even for slamming coffee before lifting. Oh, why are you doing that? You shouldn't need that. Just go with a natural motivation. That kind of critique. Still, we understood there was a super training effect that could be possible. And what I mean by that is, if you consistently bring yourself to, let's say, 110%, which usually people abuse that term, but what if you really could do that? Exceed yourself with the explosiveness of your training or more reps or whatever, even by 5 or 10%, over the course of several months, you would be more explosive and probably more muscular and a better athlete because of it. And that's what, this is personal and this is just a anecdote, but that's how we felt about it. Now, over the years, pre-workout pills and powders, they solidified into a popular product category. I think everybody knows that, as did energy drinks, sort of on a parallel path. I recall the first time that I shared a Monster energy drink with my wife. We were at a late-night drive-in, and we looked at each other wide-eyed and agreed, this is not just caffeine. In fact, to this day, I'd love to do an acute study using like a profile of mood states, what's called a PALMS questionnaire, and an HRV strap right across the chest, or even like an Apple Watch to look at heart rate variability, and try to document those differences just acutely, like literally within the hour or two after consuming different pre-workouts. Is a caffeine pill different from coffee, different from a Monster energy drink, or a pill or powder? You get the idea. Brain chemistry is so complex, and my experience is such that I have to think that something is there. Now, looking at a draft of a book that I'm working on right now, there's quite a list of pre-workout ingredients. Here are some things to think about. Not all of these are stimulants, but again, often ingredients in a pre-workout. This is not a comprehensive list. Arginine, sort of a blood flow idea here. ATP disodium, which is supposed to be a more novel, more effective version of literally just consuming ATP. I'm skeptical about that, but I was skeptical about creatine and what it might do as well. And there's probably a 75% consensus that works for repeat explosive performance. And of course, I compare it to creatine because ATP and creatine are both phosphagens and play similar roles in cell energy metabolism. Branch-chain amino acids, right? Leucine, isoleucine, and valine, not really stimulants, but part of pre-workouts. B vitamins, beetroot, again, a vasodilatory sort of thing. Beta-alanine, right? A precursor to muscle carnosine, acidity buffer, and that sort of thing. Some people even referring to beta-alanine like almost a second-generation creatine-like product. Betaine, caffeine, chlorogenic acid, which is present in coffee. Coffee's not just liquid caffeine. Choline, and we'll include phosphatidylcholine and citicoline in there. Citicoline is fascinating to me. Citicoline, sold as a drug. Pretty interesting stuff. Straight coffee, just a good, fresh ground coffee. What a complex matrix of goodness that you have there. Creatine monohydrate, we talked about that, and I mean actual creatine monohydrate, not some other form. DMAA, right, that geranium extract that was on the market, that is now off the market by and large. A potent sympathetic nervous system kind of driver, so that definitely fills this stimulant idea. EGCG from green tea. Glucuronolactone, which is often in energy drinks. I'm not personally very excited about that one. We'll put glutamine on this list. It's in some of these products, but as a pre-workout, I don't think so. I think if there's a role for glutamine, it's going to be in overtraining. That's a story for another day. Go to cola, pyruvate, which is not a stimulant, but has some evidence behind it as a potential ergogenic aid. Again, there's an interesting history behind pyruvate. Ribose, again, not super excited about that one. Another interesting history. Synephrine, or bitter orange, right? Citrus aurantium. You could call this several things. But this is, in my opinion, it's a sympathetic driver, so stimulant, but it's compared to something like ephedra, the herb, this feels like it's more side effects and less main effect. Taurine is on this list because it's in pre-workouts. It's not generally a stimulant itself, but it's added to them. Same thing with theanine. It might actually help stimulant-type things work in a different way. And then tyrosine, another amino acid, which is a precursor to different catecholamines, including epinephrine. And I've actually seen green tea and tyrosine combinations lead to increased metabolites of adrenaline in urine. So you see all these different things. I know it's sometimes hard to even know what's in your pre-workout, like in this proprietary blend, but realizing that many of them lean very heavily on caffeine, I think that does say something. So my question for everybody today, in just this brief installment, is what do you do before exercise, if anything? After years of supplementation, I found, honestly, coffee with all of its myriad components is best from an overall training perspective. I'm actually working on a paper along those lines right now, too, so stay tuned for that. Let me finish by just thanking the hardcore group of geeks, if you will, that listen to this podcast as it starts to get ramped up here. We haven't advertised or anything at this point. Your feedback is huge, usually by email, but I've even seen a couple on YouTube. I do look at those comments and I will respond. I do see people listening on Spotify and various platforms. Almost no one looks at the YouTube channel, which is fine. It's just a good backup. But I really am relying on your feedback so I can help shape some of this stuff before we really start to do things like advertise. I'm not going to do a ton of different social media channels. I just don't have the time to do that. But as I often say, please do check out iTunes. It's very important. Some reviews. Be one of the first to review or subscribe there. Anyway, thanks for your attention. This is another Fitness Friday for you, and we'll see you later. The NutritionRadio.org podcast is for informational purposes only. If you're interested in starting a diet or exercise program, check with your physician, nutritionist, or qualified exercise physiologist in order to make the progress that you need.